Thank you, Suzanne. So before I show you some of the data that we've been collecting, I want to say a little bit about the unit that we're using and the technology behind it. And for that, I want to ask Jeff Smeechik, the student that's been paddling every day and also one of the students that helped set up the system that we're using, kind of give a brief overview of the gizmo that's sitting up here on the table. Jeff, come on up and...
Hello everybody, my name is Jeff, as you mentioned, and I'm going to be talking to you about this water quality monitoring system that Air Compass has developed, mostly. And so this is the array, as we call it. It's got 4 different metrics that we're using. It's got pH, electrical conductivity, dissolved oxygen, and also temperature. So we're using a cell phone to trigger these sensors through Bluetooth that's mounted within this waterproof box here. So the cell phone sends a signal that triggers these probes to take a reading at different points along the river. And it's taking readings roughly every 10 seconds to give us nearly continuous data, making pretty much a line down the river, as we'll show you later. So there's a lot more programming and different technical aspects that we don't really need to cover right now. So if you want, we can talk to you later more about it. And with that, we have also been taking photos using a 360-degree camera to give you more of a personal view along the river as we've been paddling. This is the 360 camera. It's kind of cool. We'll show you a little bit more about it later. And with that, I'll hand it back off to Eric.
Thanks, Jeff. Yeah, and if anyone does want to geek out, we can go geek you out later on. All right, well, a little bit of background and like where kind of this came from. Everyone heard the term big data? You know what that means? Do you have a cell phone? You see one of these before? All right, most of us are using smartphones, generating tremendous amounts of information for all the companies that we've installed their apps and Google to give us an idea of where we're at, what we're doing, what we're thinking, what we might buy, what we will buy, and it's generating tremendous amounts of information about us. And with big data, there's all kinds of new approaches trying to figure out, look, how can we learn from all this information we're collecting, the terabytes of information we're providing every day. And I study environmental systems, the environment, and kind of realized that we don't necessarily have the same level of information when it comes to the environment. So some of the images that Suzanne and Mark showed, we have a pretty comprehensive monitoring program within the basin. And in some ways it's really impressive, the 106, 102 sites that we've got consistent monitoring across a really long period of time. And that monitoring system has been developed to answer specific questions. But in some ways, like with technology, I saw an opportunity to come up with a way to collect a lot more information. Not knowing really what that might tell us, but let's dive in and see what we can find out. So I made an initial device. I made a mistake of showing that to Suzanne, and then be careful of retired women. That when they say something, they tend to mean it. So she ran with this project, and we tried to catch up. And this is kind of, you're seeing a snapshot of what we were able to kind of pull together at this point in time. And I'll show you some of the data and talk about some of the things that we've encountered. So we have the main site, and a show of hands, who's actually gone to the interactive site? Okay, so when you get home tonight, along with Mark's homework and test later, go to the website, kind of look around at some of the interactive stuff that we've put up.
Eric, show a picture of the array installed on the boat. Can you link to it on Facebook feed maybe? Or at least just tell them that it's actually installed on the boat. I don't think that's going to be it.
That's mounted in front of our kayaks. So when we say we're paddling down the river, Jeff and I have kayaks. This is mounted on the front. We have the little probes stick down in the water. And as we're paddling along, we said that it was taking samples. We're taking samples every 10 seconds. So where a water quality monitor uses a little dissolved oxygen kit that takes maybe half an hour to go through that, to get one data point per month, we're getting a data point every 10 seconds. So this is kind of the overview map. our web connection may be a little slow, so some of this stuff I hope will work. Real-time demonstration. So that's our latest point. So about an hour ago, we pulled out of Charlie's Bluff down on Lake Koshkonong. We're very windy day. And then this is the live dashboard. So I can say zoom to latest, and that'll take me to that last point. And then what looks like that continuous line of purple, I think when you first bring it up, you'll get our different metrics. So we drop down here that I can switch and look at all the different metrics that our array collects. And as was clear from Mark's presentation, there's a lot of things that go into water quality. And the 4 metrics that we have were chosen mostly due to cost. What could we measure within the budget that we had, which for nonprofits is not a whole lot. So we've got a device that doesn't do everything. Real-time phosphorus monitoring it doesn't exist really, but even if you had something close, it'd be incredibly expensive. So there's other things we'd love to measure to tell us a broader view of water quality, but we can take what we can get, and maybe this will go from this is an initial starting point. So dissolved oxygen, one of the key metrics that tells us how much oxygen is available to aquatic life. We can look at the map. This is, if I zoom in, I can see those data points. I should be able to see there's our 2 different paths. We could probably figure out at any given point in time how far Jeff was in front of me. I don't know how long. So you can see how straight we were going, and we can click on one of these points and see what the full details of that individual measurement, the time we took it, and what the arrays are giving us at that point in time. As I zoom in and out, the graph to the right changes to give me a sense of what the trends are across that particular segment. So let me zoom out a little bit further and show you us coming out of the mouth of the Rock River into Lake Koshkonong. And so we saw dissolved oxygen go from fairly high, I think. So it's kind of this dark rich colors, really high values. In some ways we're kind of concerned at how high those are. And then dropped off as it comes into the lake itself. And some of these, given we've been able to just get a single data point, the spatial, the geography of this, in some ways we haven't been able to see before. So some of this begs a lot of explanation, a lot of which is beyond some of my expertise. And we're talking with some of the experts like Mark and others at DNR to help us explain. But let me show you a few things that we think we can explain. I'm going to switch to, I'm going to get a little geeky here. This is some graphs, some profiles of the whole stream going all the way up from, so each kind of segment, and that's really small, I made it a little bit bigger. All right, can you guys see that? All right, so this is the conductivity. So how well does water conduct electricity? If we had fairly pure water doesn't conduct a lot of electricity. So we add more dissolved minerals to it, it becomes more conductive. Now it's a little bit like taking your blood pressure, in that if your blood pressure is high, we don't know exactly what's going on, but we're a little concerned about it. So with conductivity, we're concerned with either really high levels or something that changes really quickly. So we've been looking at some of these points here. Through the marsh, we saw conductivity change quite a bit here. And then there was one data point Jeff and I were looking at last night where both of our probes are clearly showing a signal right here at this data point. So we went down at the bottom. I can figure out how far along the whole Rock River that point is. And I'll pull up a GIS map. Again, getting pretty geeky on you guys. And we isolated that this was occurring along the segment of the river where the Rubicon River flows into the rock. And we paddled up the Rubicon a little bit. We saw the conductivity increase quite a bit. So this is an indication that there's something coming out of the Rubicon there's a lot of dissolved material in the Rubicon. Now the next question is, what is it? This was also one of the sites that we sampled for phosphorus. The Rubicon is an impaired stream. Those are all being sent off to wastewater treatment plants and other labs for us to get measurements back. But this is a case where we might find that that's one of the sources of phosphorus that would increase those levels to the rock being impaired. Let's see some of the other things that we're finding. Dissolved oxygen, which is key for aquatic life. So this top graph, looking day in and day out, for the most part, this time of year we saw dissolved oxygen levels that are fairly indicative of a healthy stream. Nothing that would lead to a fish die-off or anything like that. In some ways, we'd like to come back, and I'm hoping Suzanne can raise the funding so we can come back and do this whole thing again in August, and we can use this as a baseline. Thanks for volunteering. Everyone heard that, right? So a few things that we see. Some of these segments, you see a jump from, so that's the evening when we stopped, and the morning when we started. Dissolved oxygen in a healthy stream has a diurnal cycle throughout the day. In the morning, when there's not a lot of photosynthetic activity occurring, that's when everything has been respirating in the water and using up the oxygen. So we'd expect it to be fairly low in the morning. And then as the sun comes up, aquatic plants start producing oxygen. We'd expect it to slowly rise throughout the day. So that's a good indication that we've got kind of a healthy stream segment. And in a couple of the segments, we don't see this diurnal cycle. So this segment below Lake Sinisippi, the stream was narrower, the current was much slower, we didn't see much in the way of aquatic vegetation. It was really turbid. It was one of the most cloudy sections of the river that we saw. So if we were going to indicate from this data what was the section that we had probably the most concerns about, would like to go back and resample, it was day 4 below Eustisford. Some of the things that we're learning, this is a prototype. We have some days, what we'd like to see is, these are 2 units and we'd like them to line up perfectly. Jeff and I are paddling a little bit apart from one another to make sure that we're not disturbing one another. And so that's a good sign that our equipment's working right, where things line up. Then we had, on day 6, Jeff's unit is climbing up, just like we'd expect in our diurnal cycle, and mine is flatlining. We're not sure why, so that's some kind of indication that our equipment may not have been perfect that day. This drop-off, where we get 0 dissolved oxygen, the student was paddling that day. We were also trying to sample little side streams. He ended up in the mud, and we had mud plugged up in the front of our probes. So we now know that the mud has 0 dissolved oxygen. It took us a while to figure that out and get it cleaned out. All right, anything else that I want to point out? There's a few things that are generating some question marks. pH in general was fairly alkaline, so you heard of like acid rain and the concerns about acid rain. We have a lot of substrates that in the soils and so forth that would lead to calcium and magnesium and other materials dissolved in the water that give it a buffering capacity and lead to be fairly alkaline. There can be a diurnal cycle in pH. We don't see that so much. So at night is there's more CO2 that can lead to carbonic acid and make it more acidic. We don't see much of that, not much in the early morning low pHs. But some places like Lake Sinisippi, we're not sure yet, and Mark, please chime in if you've got a theory on why the pHs are so high. Again, it's a logarithmic scale with pH, so that slight change from, let's say, an 8.5 to nearly to 9 is a fairly substantial one. And kind of this general increase. So some of this data leads to a lot of questions about what does this mean. And we're going to be hopefully meeting with some other folks from DNR that know a lot more about water chemistry than we do. So I encourage you to get on the website, have a look at the data itself. We've got, along with the map, let me find one of these images that Jeff was talking about. So, someone exploring the individual data points. We also hope to learn something about the river, potentially want to go out and float some of these different segments. So this is what Porter's been doing back in the lab. We take a picture with our cell phones, that gets uploaded to the web, and then he adds it to the map. And so to give you an idea, if you haven't seen the whole Rock River, some of you may have floated a stretch or two, is that we can zoom out and you can go explore sections that you've never been before. A little bit like a street view, but not quite as many photographs, to get a sense of what some of these segments look like. Let me just randomly click on one of these 360s. And so we can do like a street view, if you use Street View on Google, and look around what the river looks like.
You can see the racks on those
Oh yeah, there we go. How's that, Lori?
That's better.
So there's the device with the probes down in the water. It looks pretty homemade, but we've got, this system is meant, we can hit rocks and they flop up and flop back. So there was a lot of prototypes that didn't work before we got one that did. So I'll hand it back to Suzanne for whoever's next. And again, at the end, if you want to ask Jeff and I questions, please do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. You've heard how important our monitors are. How many people in here are one of our street monitors? We've got a few. Okay, we've got 1, 2, 3. So, back there. Right. So we have a lot of street monitors. I retired this year from monitoring as well, but we really appreciate it. I want to say thank you. I also want to say thank you to Jane Carlson, who's our president. Andy's going to be moving us out here. I'm not sure we'll be able to get back. So Jane, if you've got a question about the Rock River Coalition, Jane can tell you more about that. And I also want to tell you that if you want a special experience, tomorrow we'll have a big giant 26-foot Voyager canoes. We have 10 people paddling. We have 6 or 7 and 1 right now, so we've got room for more. I didn't want to, in case you left before you came back, I want to make sure I said that. Every day, every one of these community programs, we've had a different speaker talking about a different part of the river. And we started with a welcome, and then placemaking. How can the river become even more important to the city of Horicon than it is? The economic development coordinator there felt that we could do a much better job in the Horicon of focusing and bringing more value to the city by looking at the river. Well, you guys have done that here a lot of ways with your river walks and the different things you've done. And they're kind of looking at Fort Atkinson and others as ways that they can improve it. We had talk about recreation, the river as a recreational driver of the economy. And we had talks about the fishery, heard about that. So we've had we had the Watertown Fast River Rescue, you know, the importance that the community puts on putting funds into safety. So tonight we have Andy Selly, city engineer, who's going to talk to us about the city. You heard some of it from Mark, but how does the urban water, let's see, can I read the cities and water quality improvement projects. Yay, we need that. And our goals for the future. So Andy?